Hello, this is Muho and
I'm Brad Warner.
in Osaka.
Yeah,
You're visiting Japan for the first time in 14 years, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know exactly when. It was at least 2009 or 2010 when I last came to Japan.
Has Japan changed a lot?
Not as much as I thought. I mean, there was all the lockdowns and things, and that changed stuff. And then some of the record stores I like went out of business, so that's a little sad for me because I'm a big record collector. But otherwise, it seems like the same. Yeah.
Were you ever into Japanese bands?
Some, but I was never. I didn't know the scene that well. There was a couple, and the Japanese bands I liked, like even Japanese people don't know.
I see.
There was a band called Eriki Buran, and I really loved that band. And then I look on the internet and stuff, and even searching in Japanese, nobody says anything about Eriki Buran, and they were my favorite band.
I see.
Yeah.
How about the Boredoms?
I know them, but but I haven't really followed their career or anything.
I see.
Or there's another band, what the hell are they called? There's this psychedelic band that's been around forever that's really good. It turns out they're more Acid Mother's Temple.
Acid Mother's Temple.
And it turns out they're more popular in America than Japan.
There's some bands like Shonen Knife. Nobody knows them like they're from Osaka, but nobody in Osaka knows Shonen Knife.
Yeah.
They were big in the 80s, 90s.
That's true, yeah.
America.
I once wrote to Shonen Knife and I got a nice postcard back from their drummer. And I still have it somewhere. When I first got to Japan, I wrote her like a letter, I wrote Shonen Knife. I didn't really write to one single person there. And then the drummer wrote back to me. It was really nice.
I see. One thing that I would like to talk about with you is Zen in the West.
Okay.
Like you trained in Japan with your teacher Nishijima Roshi, but now you're teaching in the West, so you know how Zen is practiced in Japan and how it's practiced and taught in the West. Do you see differences?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that thing that we were talking about earlier, where the Japanese, like if you go to a Japanese Zen temple, they give you very little instruction.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to be the case. Even my teacher, who was very used to dealing with Westerners, he gave a little bit more instruction than the average Japanese teacher, but it was mostly just the mechanics. Like you're going to sit here in the position and what you're going to, how you're going to sit and what time you're going to be there and that kind of thing. And then after that, it was just like, you're on your own. You have to figure out what to do with this 40 minutes now that you're going to do this. What am I supposed to be doing for 40 minutes? Well, you're sitting there. Well, and then people want more.
Yes.
And that tends to be an issue when I go and give these retreats and things in Europe and in America, where people want like a detailed instructions about what am I supposed to do when I do this. That I think is a big difference. But also the thing you probably noticed is like it seems to be easier to find people who are serious about Zen practice in the US and Europe than it does in Japan. Like you don't, like almost everybody, I mean Zen is a very popular sort of religion here, Zen, and so you meet people, I've knew people at work who were like, oh yeah, I'm Sotoshu, Zen, Sotoshu. Yeah. They knew that that's what their family temple was. They'd never done Zazen at all. They were amazed. I'd be like, I'm going off to a retreat and going to do this for the weekend or whatever it was. And they were just amazed that somebody would do that. So that's, in a way, it feels like the transfer is happening. Like Buddhism went from India and then up into China and then down through Korea and in Japan. And now it's going to America and Europe, and that's where more serious practice, I think, is being done in America and Europe than in Japan, and certainly more than in China, where it's illegal for. I guess it's legal to practice now. There, I don't really know, but So you find more people who are serious. So sometimes people will come to me and say, I'm serious about Zazen and Zen practice, and I want to go to Japan, and I tell them you're actually probably better off where you are, in America or Germany or wherever. I happen to have this conversation. Finland, I go to Finland a lot. you probably, I mean, even that would sound like an obscure example, but I would think even in Finland you would have more of an opportunity to really do a serious Zen practice in Finland than in Japan. Yeah. And so that's a big difference, I think.
I think lots of Westerners, when they come to Japan, have the feeling that at least some, maybe many of the practitioners here just go through the movements, especially if they're only in it because they've been born as the first son in the temple.
Sure.
For them, Zazen just means to sit still and, well, doze off.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I think it's maybe a good thing that we in the West ask, well, how is it done? Why do we do it? What's the meaning of it? Ask for, well, the meaning of things. Why do we do that?
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's maybe the tendency to, well, over-intellectualize it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about, well, I visited the US, but it's long ago, so most of my experience is with German groups. When I visited Germany and Switzerland last year, there was a lot of talk about, well, what's happening to Zen in the West. Like 40 years ago, when both of us started in the 80s, it almost seemed that Zen is the future in the West, or the West is the future for Zen, and everybody, well, said it's already dead in Japan.
Yeah.
But now, when you visit Europe, when I was in my 20s, there were other people in their 20s. There were lots of young people. When I go now, those
the same people.
Exactly. And where are the people in the 20s? Some of them
yeah.
maybe do Tibetan Buddhism, some of them do Theravada, some of them do completely different things. So a lot of people ask themselves, at least when I visited last year, where are the young people? Is Zen dying already after 40 or 50 years? And I had the impression that maybe a part of the reason is that this over-intellectualization, or this talk that went in the 80s, like Japanese Buddhism is only form, it's only ritual. We don't need the robes, we don't need the bowls, and you come from a tradition where form is not valued so much. And I can see that point, because you get attached to the form. So what is important? For some, it's the enlightenment experience. For others, it's practicing in daily life. But what I felt is missing in a lot of these centers, for example, everybody's talking about that everyday life is Zen. But then, when you look who's washing the dishes, well, somebody's washing the dishes. Somebody drops a cup of coffee, they ask, what shall I do? Oh, just leave it like that. Somebody's going to clean up.
Who's going to clean up?
Somebody's going to clean up. I had the feeling that a lot of these sessions also, it's almost like a seminary. And of course, it's not the form, but I have the feeling that something is missing, or something might got lost.
It could be, yeah. I mean, you, like you said about the forms, like Nishijima Roshi was not really into form. He wore the robes and shaved his head, but he never thought. He said, if you want to, he would say, it's just my habit. He never made a big deal out of it. If you want to do that, you can do that. If you don't want to do it. And the ceremonies, even when we went to sesshin, were very, I mean, compared to how a regular Japanese sesshin is, usually the ceremonies and rituals were very little. He didn't even do like a chanting service in the mornings, which is kind of a common thing. So it was very minimal. I'm not sure where I was going with that. But he was all about sitting, and so I tried to do that. Okay, yeah, that's where I was going with it. When I got back to America, I found people were a little bit too attracted by that idea of like, oh, let's just get rid of the rituals. So I actually went and learned. I went up to Tassajara and learned a bunch of the rituals which Nishijima Roshi had never bothered to teach, and started bringing those back because I thought, oh, you guys need this because it's much too easy for you to say, oh, yeah, we don't need those rituals. I'm like, well, maybe it'd be good to challenge yourself with some of that. So I started to I brought it back, even though that my teacher was kind of against it. You know, and I feel like am I betraying Nishijima's spirit, you know, by introducing all this stuff that he never taught. And because he never taught it, I feel like I don't know it very well. You know, I just picked it up from watching these guys in Tassajara do it, and I had one guy who actually showed me, you know, how to do it. But it's kind of ironic that I spent 11 years in Japan, you know, with most of it with this Japanese Zen teacher, and I never learned how to do. The robe chant was very important to him.
Yeah.
The meal chant was very important to him. After that, he didn't care. Even chanting Heart Sutra, he didn't do that. You know, and I thought, oh, that's basic stuff. But there is this other aspect, and I kind of, in America,
yes.
if you talk about Zen in the West, Americans really have that tendency to commercialize anything. You know, whatever it is, they'll find an angle to commercialize it, and that's the thing that bothers me more than anything about Zen in America, is that it's commercialized. It's also kind of fossilized in a way, and politicized. You know, they get into the.
What do you mean by fossilized?
Well, they just kind of. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just it's like they kind of have tried to set up the thing, and that this is how
you
it's
conserve
done.
it like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Which I think is good in a way.
Yeah, we are running out of time, which is sad, because I would have loved to talk about the politicization as well. But
I don't see that much in Europe. I don't know if I'm just missing it because I'm
maybe it's not as strong.
The language, but yeah.
But it's also there. But unfortunately, we're out of time, and you talked about it on your channel. So if anybody's listening to that now and you want Brad's take on politics and Zen, go to his channel. The camera is gonna switch off any second. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Brad, for the talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good time in Japan. Yeah, that's a